The Admiral stood on the command balcony, his posture, rigid eyes narrowed as he watched the old veteran disappear into the interior of the massive carrier. The incident with the hidden drone still replayed in every sailor's mind. The tension had been real. Fear had gripped the deck, and yet the man who had appeared most fragile was the only one who stayed calm. The Admiral felt a stirring memory. Something about that name. William Hayes echoed distantly through his years of classified operations, and grim reports. He wondered if this was the same warrior the government once labeled a living weapon below on the deck. The younger sailors gathered in knots, whispering like waves hitting steel. Some stared at the path Hayes had taken. Others glanced at each other, still out of breath from the encounter. How had he known what to do? How had he moved so confidently while everyone else froze? The youngest among them, a fresh recruit named Carter, could not shake the moment from his mind. He had been the one closest to Hayes. He had seen the veteran's eyes filled with experience, like he was reliving battles long ago, but also as if he expected something worse to come. Hayes walked slowly through the corridors, feeling the weight of judgment lighten, but never fully disappear. Age had taken much from him. Speed, agility, steady hands, but it could not take away instinct or the echoes of orders once shouted across violent skies. He remembered when he was young, when his entire squad relied on him to make the impossible choices. He remembered missions that never made headlines, operations so deep in the dark that only ghosts returned. He had survived them all, but each survival carved out a piece of him, leaving wounds that time never healed. Entered the dim hangar where aircraft slept like resting beasts, silent and ominous. His steps echoed through the space, his thoughts heavy. He knew threats in war never came alone. If a disguised drone was probing them, then something or someone was planning more. This was just a test. He had seen patterns like this before. Enemies did not strike once and walk away. They waited, watched measured reaction, and then returned with deadly precision. Hayes paused, a slight tremor in his hand. Not of fear, but of anticipation, the kind that awakened instincts buried under years of forced quiet. Meanwhile, on the bridge, the Admiral demanded every detail from the tech crew: radar logs, communication records, anything that might explain what had happened. His voice sharp yet controlled when the report came. It confirmed what Hayes had revealed. The hostile drone was advanced far beyond what their standard detection systems could pick up, meaning someone out there had knowledge of U.S. military weaknesses. That alone was enough to trigger concern among the higher chain of command. The Admiral clenched his jaw, knowing they were vulnerable, and knowing the man who alerted them was currently being treated as an outsider. Carter searched for Hayes, driven by something he did not understand. Respect, maybe, or the desire to apologize. He found him studying an unmanned jet, the old veteran's hand resting gently on the cold metal. Hayes did not turn when Carter approached, but the young sailor hesitated, unsure of what to say. His voice finally broke the quiet, asking, "How did you know?" Hayes answered slowly, like someone waking from a long dream. He said, "Experience is the only weapon age cannot dull." Carter nodded. Though he barely understood, yet he felt a shift inside him, a realization that wisdom came not from rank, but from scars, invisible to the eye. Suddenly, the ship trembled. Alarms blared again, but this time deeper, more ominous. The deck lights flashed, warning red voices over the comm. Shouted incoming threat, multiple signatures approaching from the horizon. Sailors and officers scrambled once more, chaos threatening to consume them. Hayes moved instantly, quick, despite the stiffness in his bones. Carter followed without thinking, like a shadow learning to run after a leader. He had just begun to trust. They reached the deck together, where the crew pointed toward the distant sea, dark shapes closing in at alarming speed. Fighter jets prepared for launch. Every second counted. But confusion muddied decisions again. Officers debated the best response, but arguments drowned efficiency. The Admiral watched this unfolding crisis, gripping the railing, frustration burning beneath his composed exterior. Then his gaze snapped to Hayes, who stood still but purposeful eyes scanning the threat-measuring direction, velocity intent within seconds. Hayes realized these were not just drones. These were guided strike crafts organized and coordinated. This was the real attack, he shouted. Instructions cutting through the noise, ordering the jets to launch in pairs, and to shift formation into a defensive wedge unfamiliar to these pilots but perfect for blocking the crafts. Predicted path, the Air Wing commander hesitated until the Admiral barked the order himself with jets soaring into the sky. Hayes grabbed the nearest handset, linking into the communication channel, his voice steeled by decades of battle, commanding maneuvers that required precision and faith. The pilots listened as if instinctively trusting the old warrior guiding them. High above the ocean, the night lit up with aerial fire streaks of light colliding with targets. The enemy crafts evaded at first, maneuvering with calculated intelligence. But Hayes predicted their movements, his mind analyzing speed angles, weakness. The jets countered swiftly, intercepting threats one by one. Explosions lit the sky like fiery stars falling into the sea below. Sailors cheered each successful shot. But Hayes felt no relief, not yet, because his intuition screamed that this attack was only a distraction. He turned sharply, sprinting toward the starboard rail faster than anyone expected. A young sailor shouted, asking what he was doing, but Hayes ignored him. He scanned the waters, and there it was, a faint ripple beneath the waves, too steady to be natural. His heart pounded as decades of training connected the dots. If the enemy weakened the air defenses, they could clear the way for a silent strike from below. The carrier had been the target all along, not from the skies, but from a weapon beneath them. He called for depth charge, readiness, but the crew hesitated, unsure if he was right. He yelled louder, demanding immediate action. Carter backed him up, urging the operators to trust the man who saved them once already. That urgency pushed them into motion charges, armed and deployed. Seconds later, a thunderous boom erupted underwater. The ship shook violently, and a massive plume of water shot upward, revealing twisted metal fragments, proof that a stealth submarine drone had been targeting the hull with catastrophic intent. The realization swept through the carrier like lightning. They had been moments away from being sunk, and no ordinary defense would have stopped it. Shock and fear returned, but this time admiration overshadowed doubt. Sailors looked at Hayes as if he were the shield between them and the abyss's emergency crews rushed and pilots returned. Hayes leaned against the bulkhead, breath heavy, but eyes sharp. He knew more would come. Enemies did not stop until they achieved their purpose, and he wondered how long it would take before those in command understood that the past he carried might be the only thing keeping them alive. Above him, the Admiral watched silently. Every doubt erased every question. Burning brighter, he now needed answers, because their survival might depend on the truth buried inside the man. Everyone had underestimated for far too long. Night settled across the carrier, but tension remained thick, like the fog drifting over the dark waves. The crew carried a new sense of alert readiness, knowing the danger had not passed, and at the center of their vigilance stood William Hayes, a man who tried to avoid the spotlight, yet now found himself unable to escape it. The Admiral approached him again, later privately, his tone calm but eyes sharp with searching intent. He wanted to understand everything, who Hayes truly was, what he had seen, and what he feared might come next. Hayes hesitated, then finally spoke, his voice low, steady, weighted with years of silence. He revealed pieces of the past he once locked away long ago. He served in the most covert units tasked with missions impossible. For ordinary soldiers, operations erased from official records targeting enemies that never showed their faces. He had shut down networks that planned to annihilate fleets and nations. He was trained to see threats before they formed and act before any leadership even knew something was wrong. He said that the attack they faced now was not the work of a lone enemy. This was a coordinated assault, a test of defenses by a powerful adversary determined to cripple the United States at sea. The Admiral listened closely, absorbing every word. He knew they were not dealing with coincidence. The swarm assault. The underwater drone, the advanced technology no one should have possessed. Someone was preparing for open conflict quietly in the shadows, and Hayes was the only one who seemed able to read the battlefield without needing a full intelligence report. The Admiral made a decision right there. He would assign Hayes as a tactical advisor despite his age rank. Aside, the veteran had earned command, respect through undeniable skill and instinct, but not everyone welcomed this decision. Some officers felt threatened by the idea that an old man could bypass their authority. Jealous resentment brewed like a storm clouds forming unseen below the surface. Among them was Lieutenant Pierce, a proud man who believed in modern strategies and dismissed old war tactics as outdated. He whispered doubts among his peers, spreading the idea that Hayes' luck would eventually fail and that putting trust in him was risky. Pierce watched Hayes with narrowed eyes, eager for the moment he could expose him as a relic of the past. Meanwhile, Signal's intelligence detected encrypted transmissions coming from beyond.